There we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Deep Roots webinar series, Curious by Nature, at our 6 p.m. airtime. Um, we're happy to have you. Excited to be here. My name is Maddie Ball. I'm going to be the host today. As our usual host, Cydney Ross is the guest expert and will be joining us shortly. Before we get into the show, there's a few announcements for us to go through. We're going to start with our sponsors. I'd like to thank the Missouri Department of Conservation for sponsoring this show and for all the amazing work that they do in Kansas City and throughout Missouri, promoting conservation of our natural areas in Missouri. We love the Missouri Department of Conservation, and we're happy to partner with them. And I'd also like to thank donors like yourself. This program wouldn't be possible without the generosity of you guys participating here today and donors of Deep Roots. So thank you. All right, if you are looking to learn hands-on skills on how to manage your native garden, you can join us at the Anita B. Gorman Conservation Discovery Center on Tuesday, October 22nd for our final session of the season. Sad, but it had to happen. It's going to be from 5 to 7 p.m. And this session is going to be focused on how to edit your garden in the fall to make your life a little bit easier next year. These sessions are a really great time, super informative. I always have a fantastic time with all of the people who come and attend and with Cydney, who's leading us through it. So we hope you'll join us for our final session. Next week, our coworker and outdoor education program coordinator, Kay Thomason, is going to be leading 2 free beginner gardening workshops that'll cover how to plant a native garden bed during the dormant season and also go over design tips, perfect beginner native plants, and a lot of other really informative information. Kay is an awesome presenter, a lot of energy, a lot of knowledge. So check it out. Go to our upcoming events page on the Deep Roots website to learn more and register. Both of the workshops are the same, so no need to register for both. Just pick whichever one fits in your schedule best. Registration is still live for our Native Plant Conference, Planet Native. It's going to be a great event full of super informative speakers. It's perfect for native plant enthusiasts and natural resource professionals. It's going to be on February 10th through the 11th of next year, right here in Kansas City. So we'll have 21 regional and national concurrent speakers who are native plant experts. Our keynote speakers are poet and professor Camille Dungy, author of Soil, The Story of a Black Mother's Garden, and Abigail Derby Lewis, the executive director of Citizens for Conservation. The early bird registration sale is going to end on November 16th, so register now and take advantage of that deal while you can before that end date. Our webinar for next month is partnering once again with the Johnson County Parks and Recreation District to discuss prescribed burning. The first episode of the month is going to be Tuesday, November 6th at noon with guest expert natural resource manager Matt Garrett. Excited for that one. This webinar is going to be recorded as always, and all of these resources and this recording will be available online on our YouTube channel. And we also have been converting the audio of these episodes into podcasts so that you can listen while you're on the go. So really exciting and great. Or while you're in your garden, on a walk outside, on a drive, whatever works best. Don't forget to drop your comments in the chat and put any questions you have in the Q&A, which will be at the end of today's episode. We're also going to have a pop quiz at the end with a prize that will be revealed later. And now it's time to introduce, oh, she's got the prize. She's revealed it now. It's later. It is a bumper sticker package. Do you want to show them off, Cydney?
Yes, with pleasure. Okay. So we all love a bumper sticker. We love stickers, right? So here we have a sweet, got to wrap Deep Roots, right? Put on your water bottle, laptop, maybe your car, as well as 2 amazing bumper stickers from local artist to Kansas City, Andy Osier. One is Ask Me About My Milkweed. And then this other one, which I love, you can't tell, but it's sparkly. And it says, "You're going to miss me when I'm gone." And it says how you can help monarchs around. Ditch the pesticides, plant native milkweed, spread the word. So be sure to stay tuned for that pop quiz.
So fun. Well, surprise, guest expert Cydney joining the virtual stage. A little bit of background on Cydney, if I may. Cydney joined the Deep Roots team in March of 2023 after working as a native landscape specialist at the Anita B. Gorman Conservation Discovery Center. She teaches folks how to garden with native plants. She leads guided naturalist walks and our semi-monthly webinar series, Curious by Nature. Sydney's always had a naturalist spirit, with her earliest memories hiking, paddling Ozark rivers, camping with her family, and gardening with her mom. Sydney earned a BFA in ceramic sculpture from Kansas City Art Institute in 2013. Incredible artist. She maintains a fine arts practice forging natural materials that she transforms into inks. You can often find her drawing and painting birds with materials found in their habitats. Super cool. Her endless
Thank
curiosity, stewardship for the earth, and background in arts encourages her to inspire folks to connect with nature. She proudly leads LGBTQ+ inclusive nature programs throughout the Kansas City area and is a self-proclaimed native plant nerd. Cydney, hello.
Hello. Thank you, Maddie, for the wonderful introduction. So happy to be here on this side of the camera.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. I'm again so excited about this episode. Earlier in the month, we went through a couple of the aesthetics that you had selected for us, and it was incredible. And now, yeah, I'm just excited to dive into what you have for us today. Before we get started, do you want to talk a little bit about how art has been inspiring you lately, in connection with the natural world?
Definitely. So, in our last episode, I kind of talked about how art was the gateway for me to become familiar with native plant species. It's just my favorite way to learn is by drawing and observing and really just learning from folks who know more about things than me. Like that's my favorite way to learn. And so lately with my artistic practice, I've been pushing myself to experiment with more ink making materials, but also focusing on landscapes and really understanding that the landscape and the geology will inform the plants that exist in those spaces. So like next taking it up a notch for myself in my learning and incorporating soil into my pigment practice. So it's been really fun and I love this time of year because there's so much beautiful color in the landscape, both for the eyes and for my brush. So it's been really fun.
Wow, amazing. All right, are you ready to dive in?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Go for it, girl. I'm excited.
Yeah. All right, folks. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have so much information to get through. So it's going to be a whirlwind of knowledge. You won't even realize by the end of it, because you've had so much fun, that you've learned a ton. So I hope you enjoyed tonight's presentation. And if you joined us earlier this month, you know I covered two pop culture aesthetics, cottagecore and goth. So if you missed that, you can check out our recording online or listen to it via podcast. But today, before we dive into our two aesthetics, I want to talk a little bit about gardening goals because ultimately this is what it's about. We garden for different reasons, and some folks will do it based on site considerations, or perhaps they're inspired by a habitat they've seen, and they want to bring it home, right, to support the nature that's home. So that might be one reason folks garden. Other reasons could be to reduce their lawn. Who likes to mow? I don't. Or maybe to capture and reduce some of that polluted stormwater runoff. A lot of folks do it for the birds and the bees. That's a number one reason our constituents at Deep Roots plant native, according to the data. So gotta love that. And then another reason could be for aesthetics. There's no wrong answer here. Maybe all of these are the reasons why you have gardening goals. But at the end of the day, what's most important is that goals can inform the plant species you select. So I like to tell folks to plan as much as they can, or at least get inspired. Of course, you got to start anywhere, somewhere, but having some of this background knowledge about how these plants grow, what their preferred habitats are, and how they support others in our ecosystem can set you up for success. Okay. So mid-century modern. What is this? What am I talking about? So I thought this would be kind of an interesting aesthetic to discover, or rather explore, because some folks want to have a more formal, tidy garden, right? especially if you have mid-century architecture for a home. So just a little bit of history on what this design movement is. It's an American design movement that emerged from Danish designs and the Bauhaus movement and became popular post-World War II. So kind of between 1945 and the 1970s. It's characterized by clean lines, geometric form, utilitarian function, smooth flowing organic shapes, bold colors and textures that contrast with the material they're made from. And you'll often see a combination or blend of natural and synthetic materials like raw wood, clay, glass, plastic, metal. But think streamlined, minimalist aesthetic that highlights the material it's being made from. And mid-century modern often blurs the lines between indoors and outdoor spaces with good flow and visual continuity. Think California Ranch style homes or Eames and George Nelson furniture. But how does that translate to a garden? When we think of mid-century modern, what comes to mind? I'd be curious if you have thoughts on this. Feel free to add it to the chat and I'll take a look at it a little later. For me, I think of a more simplified plant palette. It's a little more formal than, say, our cottagecore aesthetic. I envision sculptural plants like mounding, clump forming, perhaps even really vertical herbaceous perennials, uh, dramatic seed heads. Perhaps you're utilizing plants that have semi-green qualities, accents of woody species that really lend themselves to that sculptural aspect. But overall, I think cohesion, right? Like planting in masses or clusters and groupings. Here in the Midwest, we have lots of limestone, so I often will see incorporated hardscaping that uses that local material, which I love. But essentially, you're working with existing lines, whether that is your roof line or windows, doors, corner fences, buildings. That's kind of the general aesthetic idea there. And here are some examples of photos. Sorry, I've got a cat in the background. It's like, what's happening? Um, but two of these photos I took on the left and on the bottom right that I thought were really good examples and just little snippets of implementing that kind of mid-century modern aesthetic. So you can see kind of topiary type styles, or at least really embracing the shape of these plants and repeating them in a more orderly way, right? Okay, so we're going to dive into our first species today, which is buttonbush, uh, Cephalanthus occidentalis. And this is a small tree or large shrub, depending on your definition. It can get anywhere from 10 to 20 feet tall, though in a garden setting, I see it more like 10 to 15 feet. It has these really amazing blooms, which you can see here on the left. They are these cream colored puff balls with just this beautiful fragrance. So if you've ever walked through the Discovery Center gardens and at the mid part of June, you may smell them or encounter them. And when you do encounter them, they're going to be covered in bumblebees and butterflies. Even hummingbirds will nectar on them. And so this is a awesome plant that can handle quite a bit of variety in terms of soil type. So naturally, I've seen it in landscapes in southeastern Missouri, down in the swamps of Mingo, where they love to get flooded, and then they can handle that dry out period as well. Now, they also are at the Discovery Center, which is not a swamp, and do just fine in average soil. But it prefers full sun. It'll have better blooms in full sun. The photo on the right is my neighbor's house. Shout out, bud. It looks really good. Great example of that sculptural element of the trunk that you see there. Our next species is fringed blue star, Amsonia ciliata. And just a quick Latin lesson, ciliata, which is the epithet or the descriptor in the scientific word for fringed blue star, means ciliate or fringed, which I love that the scientific name actually informed the common name, which actually makes it so much easier to distinguish when you're shopping for this plant. Look how cute this is. It was a tough contender because I was like, gosh, this could also be cottagecore, but it's just so beautiful. And you can see it is a short clump forming herbaceous perennial with fine ciliate, right? Like leaves, very thin and narrow. This one could be variation filifolia, which is distinguished by a very specific shape of the leaf where it's curled under, strongly revolute. But regardless, Amsonia ciliata is a beautiful plant that grows in full sun. It has these stunning light blue flowers. And as you saw in that clip, just the way the wind moves this entire plant is absolute magic. It gets to be about 2 feet tall, and it's tolerant of dry to average soil, as well as being drought resistant, deer resistant, and has stunning foliage. Okay, all Amsonia species tend to have this really beautiful yellow foliage in the fall. And there's many Amsonias out there, so make sure you're getting the one that best suits your site. Amsonia illustris, boy, she's gregarious. Very different growth habit compared to this fringed blue star or the Amsonia ciliata. So remember, folks, you don't need to know how to pronounce Latin, just how to reference it. And here is an example of a Amsonia in the fall from our friend Ken at the Fox Hill House in Lewis Park, looking beautiful. All right, folks, as you saw in some of the example photos of when I was describing mid-century modern aesthetics, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about our sedges. First, I'm going to start with oak sedge on the top left, Carex albicans. Albicans meaning whitish. This is a small sedge that has this beautiful little blades, grass-like blades that arch up. It's green from early spring to late fall. It prefers medium to full shade. So I have sedges for each sun condition, and this one particularly does well in dry, shady areas. So if you have a tricky spot in your garden, like say under an oak tree, when in doubt, sedge it out. I get little tiny sedge plugs, pop them in, and let those get established, and then I have a better time incorporating other plants. So as you may notice, this is a ground cover species, so it doesn't get much taller than 6 inches, but it can get to be about a foot in diameter. With it being seen in dry woodlands, it doesn't prefer to be soaked all the time, but if you are in a drought, which we experience more with climate change, it would appreciate a drink throughout the summer every now and then. In terms of maintenance, and this would apply to all of these sedges, I like to cut them back in early spring, so to late winter. So end of February, maybe beginning middle of March, whack it back. Don't cut the crown, obviously, but leave a couple inches, and then you'll get some nice verdant growth later in the year. Sometimes, especially with copper shoulder sedge down the bottom left, Carex baconellii, I will cut it a second time during doing the Chelsea chop, right? So anywhere between end of Memorial Day or end of May to Father's Day, I will cut it again if it's flopping or kind of has more of an open habit than I prefer. Give it another little haircut, and it had great success this year in my front yard. So copper shoulder sedge, a little introduction here for that. This is one of our full sun sedges. So oftentimes I think of sedges being woodlands, but I think I read there's like 15,000 sedge species out there in the world. So there's a lot of sedges, and they tend to be difficult to ID. But this one has been really cool. I added it to my garden at home last year. It's been doing great. I will say it is a bit taller than oak sedge. And it can grow up to 3 feet. So again, if you need something that's a little more tighter, shorter, more formal, you can give it that haircut, and it'll provide in that way. This one also has a tall flowering head, so it'll send out a single stalk with a seed head, which is very cute. But to each their own, what they want to do in their garden. It's tolerant of average soil and more tolerant of dry soil compared to other sedges. And all of these sedges are deer resistant, which is nice, right? So our final sedge in this slide is going to be palm sedge, Carex muskingumensis. Not sure if I said that right, but it's named after the Muskingum River in southeastern Ohio, where a botanist at the turn of the century found it. So that's kind of a fun little note there. But this is a sedge that defies it all. It can handle full sun. It can handle full shade. It does have a preference for wetness, or at least average soil, not a dry, glady situation. It is the tallest of the three. and grows to be about 1 to 2 feet tall. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I meant. Oh no, yeah, I'm right. Okay, copper shoulder sedge can get up to 3 feet, so maybe that one's the tallest. Palm sedge gets to be up to like 2 feet when it's really happy. And I just love it. And something I really enjoy about sedges in general is that they're a nice transition from your lawn to garden. So if you have pesky neighbors, HOA, or this is just your kind of aesthetic, you want to have a nice transition, consider adding sedges. Additionally, they provide kind of a rest for your eyes amongst all the bold, broad shapes and colors seen with these other species. Um, and they're just really cool. So why not add some sedges, especially since they're super common in areas here in the Kansas City area and elsewhere. Okay, two other species, not sedges, but at least little blue stems in the graminoid family. But first, we'll talk about horsetail, scoring rush up top, Equisetum hyemale, high or high email, not sure how to pronounce Latin, but hyemale means of winter, and it speaks to the verdant quality or semi-green quality of this plant. Folks, this is a prehistoric plant. It has literally existed for millions of years here on planet Earth, which I think is pretty cool. The common name scoring rush indicates the silica content in the stem, which has a sandpaper quality. And for those listening to the show, I want to describe it. It has a nice vertical quality to it. It looks like really tiny bamboo. It's not at all related to bamboo, but it's got this nice verdant green, and it's got these joints that are kind of brown and grayish that go up. And if you break it open, it does have that kind of rough texture. So historically, and maybe people are still using it today to clean pots, but there might be easier methods out there. So something about both horsetail and little blue stem is that they are pretty prolific plants. Again, right plant, right place. With these mid-century homes I've seen, or even just homes in general, there's going to be concrete, right? So if you have like a contained area that gets really wet, because again, this is a wet loving plant. It's featured here right underneath the downspout at the Discovery Center. It's going to do great though. It spreads really rapidly. So make sure you're putting it in a place you want to see it. But I think it's ideal for those garden beds that are kind of enclosed by concrete, perhaps the house, something like that. But it does have a preference for average to wet soil. And if you want to see it in person, I already mentioned the Discovery Center, but you could also go to the Parkville Nature Sanctuary where they have it there, and you can walk across this cute boardwalk and look down at it. It's very cool. And it gets to be about 4 feet tall, and again, preference for full sun, but it can handle some shade as well. And according to Merv, this plant is very good as a Merv of Missouri Wildflower Nursery. This plant is a good monoculture plant as it's very prolific. It's good as a container plant that doesn't need a drainage hole. So for folks who want to try that out, you might consider it. Then at the bottom, I have little blue stem, Schizocarium scoparium meaning broom-like, which is very appropriate for this plant. It is one of our tallgrass prairie species. It is a clump-forming ornamental plant, beautiful year-round. In spring, it has blue-green foliage and shifts to these beautiful kind of rainbow rust and green colors in the fall. Seed heads are also beautiful. They have an ethereal quality, I think, especially when the sun is behind it. They look magic. This plant can get up to 4 feet tall. And similarly to the sedges, I'd recommend you cut it back before we get to the height of the growing season. Missouri Botanical Gardens suggests late May to mid-June. I might suggest that if you were doing, if you want it to be a little shorter. Now, if you're doing cleanup from the year prior, treat it like the sedges and cut it back at the end of February, beginning of March. Now, this plant is very prolific. So again, kind of like the horsetail, make sure you're putting it in a place that you want it. And it prefers full sun, but it can handle some light shade. And many insects feed on the foliage, including skipper butterflies and walking sticks, which are so fun. So love those, love little blue stem. If you don't want the seed to spread, you might have to cut it before it goes to seed, but I really love it. So whatever you decide. I paired these next three native plants because they have similar growth habits. They're all very short and mounding kind of quality, and they have very cute blooms. So first up on our list is short bee balm, Monarda bradburyiana. This is a plant that can handle sun to mostly shade. I do find it gets a little more powdery mildew the more shade it's in and the less airflow it has in a garden, but it's beautiful. It has these pale pink tubular flowers. Someone described it as like a Muppet head, like which I thought was very cute. It only gets to be about 18 to 24 inches tall and has a preference for average soil, and it blooms late spring around May or June. Not to mention, bee balm, Monarda species, are a culinary plant and can be used as tea. I make a killer bee balm shortbread, and it's one of my favorite things. So, also, the goldfinches love to eat the seeds from the seed heads in the fall. It's very fun. And now, this is not to be confused with its cousin, Monarda fistulosa, which is also a great plant. Very different growth habit, more cottagecore vibes in that it's a free spirit and loves to spread and is very gregarious. Next up, we have small skullcap, Scutellaria parvula. Parvula meaning small, which you can see here. Not only is the plant small, but it has tiny little tubular purple flowers. They kind of remind me a little bit of a snapdragon, though not related as far as I know. This plant also prefers full sun and can handle medium shade or half sun as long as it's kind of leaning towards getting more sun than not. It will bloom after bee balm around May to July. We have this in the parking lot gardens at the Discovery Center, right next to that bee balm. I think I actually took those photos right near each other. So yeah, it's a little shorty. And something kind of interesting about this plant is that it spreads via moniliform rhizomes, which if you've ever dug up one of these plants to move it, or maybe you bought one from a plant sale and you're looking at it, the roots look like beads. It's the weirdest thing. It's very cool. This plant, it's rated to get up to about 12 inches tall, but I usually see it much shorter than that, like six or so inches. And finally, we have Dittany, Cunilla oreganoides meaning resembling oregano. We got another culinary plant up in here. This is also another shorty. It only gets to be about 1.5 feet tall. It's got these like beautiful little lavender flowers, tons of them, and it blooms much later in the season compared to the other two. I saw it blooming in my garden in September this year, but sometimes it blooms even in late summer. It has a preference for sun to medium shade, dry to average soil, also found in dry woodland edges. I saw a ton of it when I was down in the Ozarks earlier this year. Another cool thing about this plant is it makes frost flowers. This is a phenomenon that happens only with certain plants. And when we get our first hard freeze, the water in the stems expand, right? That's what happens when water freezes. It expands and it splits through the stem, creating these beautiful ice ribbons. So you have to get into your garden super early to witness this. You can see it with crown beard as well. But the ice, which looks like little flowers, will melt once the sun hits it. But just kind of a cool little phenomenon about this plant. With it being minty, that is a great type of plant to deter deer. They don't, I mean, if hungry, deer will eat anything, as you all know. But if you want to try to deter them, go for the minty plants, the spicy ones. It's also really great for container gardens as well. And here's what both Dittany on the right and short bee balm look like on the left in the fall and winter. The leaves of the short bee balm are so stunning, burgundies and rusts and golds. And then on the right, those aren't flowers. Those are like the little seeds, or at least like the bracts. I'm not actually sure what they are, but it's cute and I love it. And it has this great visual quality in my garden right now. All right. We are moving on to the tropical aesthetic. So, landlocked Midwest. I know. But I'm thinking bright, colorful plants, things that billow on the breeze, bold leaves, oyster shell pathways. I want to keep the summer vibes going with this one. So some things that you can do in addition to the species I'm mentioning to bring those summer vibes year round is maybe put some native plants in pots. It is totally a thing. You don't have to have a yard that you dig in to have native gardens and support wildlife at home. I got this great photo from friend of the show, Sonny Brannick, that features both Eastern prickly pear and rock pink in a pot. And then the other two photos on the right are ones that I planted myself. So you can definitely incorporate potted native perennials on your patio, on your balcony, outside your door. And kind of a fun thing, but later, or the beginning of next year in spring, our friend and colleague Kay Thomason will be leading a workshop on native plants and pots. So stay tuned for that and subscribe to the Pollinator if you want to learn more. Okay, first on this tropical list is butterfly milkweed, Asclepias tuberosa. So that first part of the scientific name, Asclepias, is the genus, and it means, Asclepius means the Greek god Asclepios, or the god of medicine. Now, the second part of that word, tuberosa, is the epithet, again, the descriptor, and that means tuberous, referring to the root. So I know if you've heard me talk about this plant, I have a love-hate relationship with it. On one hand, I love it. On the other hand, sometimes I struggle to keep it alive if it's in really deep clay soil. But if you have dry, sandy, or rocky, or more average soil, this might be a good plant for you. It is full sun. And for those listening, it has these crazy clusters of bright orange flowers, also known as umbels, and they really stand out in the landscape. The foliage is lance-like and varies from a dark, rich green to a bright, verdant green. It gets to be about 1 to 2.5 feet tall and tends to bloom from June to August or somewhere in between. It's often found on glades and in prairies. This is a clump-forming milkweed, and the flowers sit on top of their stem. And unlike other milkweeds, this one doesn't produce the milky sap that you see. But once pollinated, they do produce a spindle-shaped seed pod. And once that pod's ripe, they burst open, sometimes from the help of the milkweed bugs and beetles. And those seeds float on the wind via their silk. And we all know, or I hope you know, that monarchs are the host plant, or milkweed are the host plant for monarch butterflies, but also gray hair streaks and queens. One thing I will say about this, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, but it doesn't tolerate a lot of rain and it's susceptible to root rot. But with that said, look how cute this is. It's so beautiful and cheery. Okay, so I have a crazy idea, and please let me know in the chat if you've done this. Has anybody grown milkweed in a pot? No, this is not AI. Yes, I poorly photoshopped giant butterfly milkweed blooms over a potted plant. But I'm like, I know it's got a taproot too, but I'm wondering if someone's done that because I think it could work really well for this plant as long as you have a large enough pot. Okay, so here's another one, folks, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I'm into it. Blanket flower, Gaillardia pulchella. Pulchella meaning pretty, which this plant is. It's got these daisy-like flowers with these bright red centers that fade out to yellow on the edge. Very tropical vibes. This is an annual, folks. Annual native plant. Burr, burr, burr. We really need to do an episode on annual natives. They're not as common in the nursery trade for obvious reasons. It can be difficult to propagate and all of that, but this is such a fun one. It is a full sun species. It blooms in June and it gets to be between 1 and 1.5 feet tall. It has a preference for dry to average soil, but these photos here I took in my garden at home and they came back this year. So with that said, it being an annual, if you want it to come back, you need to let it go to seed and reestablish itself each year. The foliage has kind of this grayish green leaf, which is nice as well. Goldfinch will also eat the seeds, and it tolerates drought. And I think annuals especially native annuals, can be great to use to fill in a newly established garden. It does prefer well-draining soil, but tolerates clay unless it's overly wet, which again, it too can suffer from root rot. Okay, rose mallow. This was the plant that really like kicked off this aesthetic of tropical vibes for me. Rose mallow, hibiscus laziocarpos. Laziocarpos means hairy fruited, which if you've seen this plant after it's been pollinated, it does have these hairy fruits that hold seed at the top. I think they're really cute. They kind of remind me of kitten paws. But this is an herbaceous perennial that borderlines shrub because it can get up to 6 feet tall. It is an herbaceous perennial, but my friend Rachel sent me this photo. They have a beautiful stand of it in their backyard up against their fence. I'm like, that's your rose mallow. It is wildly beautiful. Another full sun species, though it can handle a little bit of shade, and it blooms from August to September here in the Kansas City area. It has a preference for average to moist or even wet conditions. I see it planted in rain gardens, even pond edges. I even see it in our clay soil. So to describe this flower, it has huge white or pale pink blooms with a crimson or dark pink center. It's very attractive to bumblebees, butterflies, moths, and hummingbirds. And if you do have a rain garden at home, this is going to be a great one to have in the center due to its height and kind of structure. Then here on the right, we have its opposite, little shorty, purple poppy mallow. Also has these nice open flowers, but in this case, with the ground cover, it's very short. It only gets to be 6 to 9 inches tall, and those flowers are this bright magenta wine cup. They're just stunning. It is a full sun lover, but it can handle a little bit of shade. I think it needs at least 4 hours of sun. And it will bloom June to August. But if yours starts to look a little sad and leggy towards the end of summer, you can cut it back to the crown. Just be sure not to cut into that tuber. Trim it back maybe in, I don't know, maybe July, and sometimes you'll get a rebloom, which I love a rebloom. So I mentioned this is a ground cover. I wrote ground crawler, which it does that too. And it prefers dry to average soil. Soil generally needs to be well drained. And on the bottom right, you can see it interplanted with prairie drop seed, it's just so beautiful. It adds another dimension to that planting area, which you can see at the Discovery Center. In addition to the hot magenta pink wine cup flowers, it has bright yellow green palmate shaped leaves, so palmate looking palm like. I mentioned it's drought tolerant, it loves the heat, loves to creep, and yeah, it's just 10 out of 10 would recommend. Smooth sumac, we're getting back into the shrub game. Rus glabra, glabra meaning without hairs. This is a full sun to light shade shrub, large shrub or small tree. It gets to be about 15 feet tall. It has blooms from June to August. And or I'm sorry, it has its fruit around June to August. That for me, the flowers, yeah, they're fine, but the fruit is really the cool thing about this. You can see those red structures. Those are called drupes, and birds go crazy for them. Now, I've said it once and I'll say it forever, but right plant, right place, folks. This small shrub or large shrub, small tree is spreads rhizomatically from roots under the ground and is thicket forming. So if you live by a prairie, please do not plant this. It is one of the plants that encroaches on prairies, but it can do really well in a contained space. So I met somebody who had planted this around their pool, and I was thinking, gosh, can you imagine laying in a pool, having a nice beverage, reading a book, and you just see this beautiful smooth sumac right above it. And here's what that looks like in person. As you can see, the feather or the foliage is feather-like with compounded leaflets that are coarsely toothed. And it has a white underside while the top is shiny green. And in the fall, as you saw here, it turns this brilliant red. And they've just started to turn at the Discovery Center if you want to see what that looks like. It's great, but again, right plant, right place. This would do well in a contained area, or if you want it to spread in your backyard, that's totally fine. It is our native sumac. It's not an invasive, but as I mentioned, it can pose some problems if you were right next to a prairie. Willow leaf sunflower, Helianthus salicifolius. Salicifolius meaning salix, meaning willow-like. This is a full sun sunflower. And yes, she gets to be between 8 to 10 feet tall, but I'll cover that bit here in just a moment. It blooms September through October with these beautiful 2-inch wide bright yellow sunflowers. It is fine feathery foliage that droops its leaves, again, kind of similar to what a willow looks like in appearance. And those leaves grow out of a tall, long stalk. It's tolerant of a wide range of soil, including clay. So it's one of the clay busters. It spreads by creeping rhizomes and it can form dense colonies. Um, Again, right plant, right place, right? So let's talk about that height. So it can get to be 8 to 10 feet tall. However, easily maintained if you don't want it to get that tall by the Chelsea chop, which I like to call mimicked herbivory. So that's when you're going in and cutting back these taller late season plants like helianthus or asters, symphyotrichums or solidagos or goldenrods. And I do this anywhere from kind of the end of May or Memorial Day to Father's Day or mid-June, kind of a way to think about that. By cutting it back, I know it can be scary, but it encourages the plant to not grow taller, but instead produce more flowers and it has a more compact appearance. But frankly, gosh, it's a really cool plant. And if you have a spot where you can have a 10-foot tall sunflower, go for it. And if that doesn't tempt you, it's a keystone species, okay? Burr, 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 keystone species alert. It's foundational to the food web. It hosts the largest population of native caterpillars and bee specialists. The caterpillars will eat the foliage. Pollinators are all abuzz on this plant. Birds eat the seeds. Bees nest in the dead stems. What's not to love about it? And did I mention the bloom smells like chocolate? Yeah. My neighbors next door are growing it and it's leaning over into my yard. So I go over and I sniff it in the morning because it's just lovely. What a delight. This plant, willow leaf sunflower, is on the Casey Keystone native plant list that we've curated. Next up is our coral honeysuckle, Lonicera sempervirens. Sempervirens meaning evergreen. This is a deciduous vining native honeysuckle with coral red trumpet shaped flowers. The leaves are kind of a bluish green and they're oval shaped. They stay semi evergreen in warmer climates, even during the winter. And now in Kansas City, especially now that we have milder winters, thanks climate change. It blooms best in full sun, but it can handle a little bit of shade and it has a preference for well draining soil, but is also tolerant of clay and black walnuts. The vigorous growth is really good for a trellis or pergola or fence. And though the flowers aren't fragrant, they're super attractive to hummingbirds, butterflies, and bees. And in the fall or late summer, they'll produce these small red berries, which don't eat them people, but birds love them. So that's kind of a fun one there too. Okay, prairie dock. This was the second plant that inspired the tropical aesthetic. Prairie dock is Silphium, let's see if I can get it, terebinthinaceum, which means like turpentine, referring to the aromatic resin produced in the stem. This plant is all about those broad leaves. It is a prairie species. It's an herbaceous perennial and it produces a long stalk about 3 to 10 feet tall with a sunflower-like bloom. And they're about 3 inches wide, these bright little yellow blooms. Tons of pollinators on them in late summer. As I mentioned, that foliage really is what does it for me. It has these big, broad, oval or kind of heart-shaped leaves, and they feel like sandpaper. Bright green, prolific seed spread, but those seeds are really good for birds. So again, you don't want to plant to spread. You got to remove the seed head before it spreads. It does have a tap root, which can be difficult to transplant once established. So just keep that in mind. Here in the bottom left, you can see it clustered in a metal culvert at the Discovery Center. We've got it everywhere at the Discovery Center because we really love this plant. It's a fun one and is definitely bringing the tropical vibes. Okay, folks, we are on our last plant before we start our Q&A. And last, but certainly not least, is American Beautyberry, Calocarpa americana. The genus Calocarpa, meaning beautiful fruit. The epithet, americana, means of the Americas, and it's noting its native range. So this is a deciduous shrub with an open growth habit and arching branches. It has ovate to kind of elliptical, serrated foliage, and the foliage this time of year turns a stunning chartreuse, like a beautiful yellow green in the fall, along with the real show, which are those fuchsia colored fruit clusters. How beautiful are those? Coincidentally, I saw a milkweed tussock caterpillar on this one, though they don't eat this plant, but kind of cute. But you know who does eat this plant? Birds. Catbirds and cardinals will eat the fruit in the winter time. It's as well as squirrels. It's really a cool plant. I was just in Jeff City today at Runge Nature Center. They have some killer examples of American beautyberry. So shout out to those folks. Um, they're doing a great job managing them. I wish I had included a photo of that, but um, but I want to tell you a little bit about the pruning that you can do to get a nice, big, beautiful plant. So we like to prune it in the winter when it's dormant to encourage more of a compact, bushy growth. So we'll cut it back as much as 1 foot from the base of the plant when it's dormant, okay? Regardless, though, whether you want a more compact plant or not, it is suggested that you remove the dead wood in the spring. And this is not to be confused with the non-native Japanese beautyberry, which has been documented as escaping into natural landscapes in eastern Missouri. So if you love the visual qualities of this plant, please consider getting the native kind and maybe getting rid of the non-native kind because it is seemingly becoming an invasive species. So just to recap, folks, you may be planting for a lot of reasons. Maybe you're a pink pony girl dancing at the club and you want a Chapel Run inspired garden, or perhaps you're kind of out there and want some more intergalactic looking species. But regardless, what you plant matters. And thank you all for planting native in your own landscapes.
Amazing. That was so great. Gosh, I was so excited to see blanket flower in there. That's one of my first introductions into the native plant world, and I
Oh,
love her
that's
so
awesome.
much.
That's so
And so cool learning about the epithets and the meaning behind the Latin names. It's so informative.
I
I
have
love
so
it.
much fun putting together these presentations because I also learn a ton about them. So thank you all for
Always.
learning with me. I think it's so fun.
All right, let's dive into some of these questions. We're going to start with Jules 7, who wants to know for grasses sown in the fall, what would be the earliest you would consider allowing mowing?
For
Um,
grasses sown by seed in the fall,
mhm.
that is a really good question because I think it would depend on the growth. I mean, I would, if you've just planted them this fall by seed, it's going to take a little while for them to get growing. I'm curious what the size of the landscape is.
It's
But I would say
yeah.
you want it to get established. But it's that fine line between making sure you're keeping them in that space and removing the other plants you don't want coming up. So I think that's a really great question, but I might need a little more information. And so if we don't get to that one today, please email me because I know someone who may have a good resources for you.
Great. Awesome. And then do you have any recommendations for overwintering natives in pots? Anne Marie Chapel wants to know.
Yes, because admittedly, I say strategic, but I'm a lazy gardener, folks.
Mm.
I still have plants in pots from the spring I need to get in the ground this weekend. So plants and pots, and how do you care for them over winter? So with our native perennials, I like to make sure they are outside, getting the snow cover. You know, even if they're woodland species, maybe they're getting some leaves on top of them. But it's totally fine for them to go through that freeze thaw cycle. A lot of our nurseries keep their stock outdoors in the winter time. One of the issues you can run into is them drying out, and that can kill the plant. I've also seen folks like heel in their plants in their raised beds. I've actually did that with some of my plants this spring. I am planning to plant them this fall, but I've seen people like actually dig holes for the pots, stick them in there, or you could even just plant them in a raised bed as well. But trying to kind of keep them from not drying out and making sure they're getting that snowfall, which is going to keep them watered through the winter, I think is probably the most important part.
Okay, good to know. Also, earlier in the chat, L Plum wanted to know if now would be a good time to plant blue stem.
Yes, y'all, fall is great for planting native perennials. Get out there. It's like 80 something degrees. I'm like kind of sweating, low key sweating here in Kansas City right now. It feels more like summer. I guess those tropical vibes are still here. So yeah, you can plant any of our perennial species I mentioned this time of year, as long as we're not getting hard freezes. So go for it. Last year, I think I was planting into early November.
Oh my gosh. That's
Not kind of
crazy.
scary. Kind of scary. Thanks, climate change.
Oh boy.
Yeah, boy.
One of our anonymous attendees has several walnut trees and is battling juglone. Wants to know if you have any recommendations.
Yes, I do. Okay, first off, the whole juglone situation. There is this story that went out, I don't know, probably hundreds of years ago, where folks said you can't grow anything under a walnut. Well, what that person didn't tell us is that person was trying to grow nightshades, so tomatoes and peppers and eggplants, which are not juglone tolerant. However, lots of our native species are. Go into the woodlands, there's tons of plants underneath walnuts. I mentioned some of the sedges earlier are tolerant, including oak sedge. There's also, we actually did a whole episode on difficult gardening conditions, which I will link in the resources following tonight's presentation. But off the top of my head, I can't remember, but I will send you a list because there are some species that do quite well. But if you're ever out in the woods and you look around and see what's growing underneath them, there's plenty of options out there. A lot of them are going to be more shade or part sun situations.
Awesome. Yeah, it looks like we have some other recommendations also coming
Oh,
in the
great. Thank
chat.
you all.
So that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Okay, we're going to do a quick pause to do our pop quiz. So I'm going to read the question out loud. I'll also put it in the chat, and then the first person to respond will be the winner of our bumper sticker package that Cydney is showcasing right now. All right. If everybody's ready, make sure that your two in your chat box says to everyone so that we can all see your answers. Okay. We love learning Latin names of our native plants. In the Latin name Hibiscus lasiocarpos, what does the word lasiocarpos describe? There we go. You guys
Anne
are always
Marie. Anne
so
Marie.
fast with it. I can't.
So fast. Great
Anne
job.
Marie, Anne Marie got it. Hairy fruit. That was the
Hairy
one with the
fruit.
hairy
That's
fruit.
right, which I thought was hilarious. It totally is, though.
Rose mallow. Rose mallow was that that
Hmm.
plant. Very cool plant. Awesome. Anne Marie, well, go ahead and send your information. Respond to the email that you get after this episode that has all of the information for this episode. Everybody will get that email. But then Anne Marie, go ahead and respond with your information so we can get those to you. Good work.
Yay, congrats.
Awesome. Okay. Um, just a confirmation. I know we talked about Dittany being deer proof, uh, somewhat as much as it can be, you know.
Yeah.
Monardas, are those also deer proof?
Yes. And
Okay.
so, yeah, Monardas, anything that has like pretty intense flavor, right? So any of the mints, the pycnanthemums, generally deer resistant, though we know when you're hungry, you'll eat just about anything. So yeah, those are great options. You could also consider plants that have rough texture. So actually prairie dock with its rough leaves, they might eat your flowers, but the rough leaves, which I think are really the showcase of that plant, they should be fine. I don't imagine a deer would find those very palatable.
Those leaves are massive. There's a
They're
few of those planted
massive.
at the
They're little.
Discovery Center. If you can go check them out, every time I see those leaves, I'm like, how'd you get so big?
Yes. Yes.
Crazy.
Also, I
Oh,
Chelsea chopped that one. Sorry, a little sidebar, but I
go for it.
Chelsea chopped the one in the demonstration garden like a little bit past Father's Day, and it is blooming now with short
Yeah,
blooms when nothing else is, well, there's lots of things blooming like asters and goldenrods, but of the silphiums, that one is still going. It looks so cute.
incredible. Carolyn Koosman would like to know if you have any other suggestions for annual natives to put with their native perennials.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was talking with Tracy of So Wild and kind of inquiring
Mm.
like what are the native annuals out there? And Sweet Everlasting is one of these. I wish I had a photo of it to share with you, and I don't know the Latin name, but Sweet Everlasting, it has these really kind of like definitely cottagecore vibes, like kind of soft white flowers, and they look really beautiful when they're dried as well, and they have a scent to them when you rub them. Other annual natives, oh my gosh, Plains Coreopsis tinctorium. I'm obsessed with this plant. I was a little seed fairy last winter around the Discovery Center, throwing these annuals everywhere because, oh, thank you, Maddie. Maddie put the common and the scientific name of Sweet Everlasting in the chat. Um, but Coreopsis tinctorium, the Plains Coreopsis, it does get a little bit taller, but it's such a beautiful plant, and you can make ink out of it, which I love.
Of course. So you kind of answered a little bit of the second part of that question, which is that they would like to know um, if you have any suggestions for local places to source these annuals. They're having trouble finding some.
I'm
Mm.
gonna before I send out the resources tomorrow, y'all, I'm gonna do a little research and see because I know, the native plant industry is young and growing, and the seed sources out there are even more limited. So we're going to do a little more exploration. I'm not sure if Missouri Wildflower Nursery has seed for those annuals. I don't know that So Wild sells them, but I will find out and I will let you know. Making a note of it right now.
Okay, running low on questions. If you have any more, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. In the meantime, Gail Forstater, there we go, is double checking that obedient plant is a native plant.
Yes,
Indeed it
obedient
is.
plant is such a great plant.
Love.
It's so fun. It gets a little bit taller. I've seen it up to like 4 or 5 feet, so it can flop. I've always wanted to try the Chelsea chop on it, but it
Mm,
has these like white and sometimes light pink tubular flowers that you can move them into position. And this was an evolutionary trait of this plant. So if we were experiencing like high wind, it would push the flowers to one direction, and then the bumblebees that pollinate it, they'll fly into that headwind to have better control of their flight path, and they'll go right into those blooms. So very cool plant. It is native. Oh, purple. Yeah, obedient plant does get purple too, which it's just fun. I love seeing variations in the native plant. So
love. Yeah, it's a cool one.
yeah,
Extremely cool. Earlier in the chat, also Mary Beth wanted to know if you've ever saved the seeds of a button bush. I believe that's what they were talking about, but
I
button
love
bush.
it.
Mhm.
I haven't. I haven't. I don't have it in my own personal yard, but the trees produce a ton of those seeds. So but something I don't see at the Discovery Center is um them growing from seed in the landscape. I would think like if it is um with all those prolific seeds, and it could be because birds are eating them. That could be entirely that, and just the way that particular area is managed. So I can't speak to how well they grow from seed, but a really great resource is the George O. White State Nursery by Missouri Department of Conservation. I will include that in the link as well. They sell saplings of our native trees, and you have to buy them in bundles of 10, but they're like 99 cents a piece. So $10, you get 10 whips, so bare root, little tiny stick looking things. and you can go in on it with your friends, pick out some of your favorite species, and then divide it up. I will include links to that as well. They're still selling right now, but I know it opens in September, I believe. And so you might plan for next year in case they're sold out. But cool plant. I love buttonbush.
It's adorable.
So cool.
All right, we're about out of time, everybody. L Plum, really quick, also wanted to know where to find past video recordings on the website because she wants to check out the goth and cottagecore aesthetics that were featured earlier this month. Very good episode. I'm going to put that link in the chat. I assume it'll also be included in the information you'll receive in your email. But you could always go to the Deep Roots website, go into the Learn How menu, and the Curious by Nature page is going to direct you to where some of those videos are past videos. And yeah, all kinds of resources there.
Thank you, Maddie. Thank you for hosting tonight's show, and thank you everyone for tuning in. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email's up on the screen, or reach out to hello@deeproots.org, and we're happy to assist you with your native plant journey, whether you're in Kansas, Missouri, or far afield. We appreciate you and appreciate that you understand what you plant matters. So
Absolutely. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and I hope you tune in again in November to learn about prescribed burns, prairie burns. Excited
yeah.
about it.
Oh, it's going to be so good. See you all next time.
Bye, everyone.